Hi everybody, so today we're going to be talking about teaching politeness, and sometimes for non-native speakers they might not be aware of situations that are deemed polite or not, and so it's up to us to help them and guide them and also learn ourselves when we go travel to new places. So I'd like to start with an example. You're a teacher and you're working in a classroom with students that are speaking and trying to learn English, and you notice that one of your students has been cursing. And you ask them why they're cursing, and they say, well, someone at my work says this word, and they didn't know that it was deemed appropriate or inappropriate. And so you have to go ahead and tell them that that word was inappropriate. But sometimes it's hard for speakers to understand whether what they're saying is inappropriate or not. So we can teach politeness in a few different ways. One way we can do that is by teaching the students that they should listen to and imitate people that they want to sound like, whether it be their instructors, their friends, family members, or people on TV and movies that they see. If they practice that type of language, then they will hopefully get to learn a little bit of more conversational clues for what is deemed appropriate and inappropriate. Notice the difference in the way people talk, depending on the types of groups, is really important. So if some people are talking or saying things, and they're like using a lot of slang, they might be talking with their friends, meaning that it's deemed appropriate to use certain words. But if they're talking more professional, then it might be time to get rid of the slang and not say those certain words that are deemed inappropriate and learn to soften your language. And then find out what parents teach their children about words that are not polite. Could be another great way of kind of teaching students about politeness. So ways that we can go ahead and teach our politeness to our students is by exposing them to authentic language. So if you think about, like I said earlier, movies, television, podcast, radio, things that are going to be more authentic, that are going to have more of a polite feel to them because they are deemed appropriate for the general public. And then talking about politeness is also very important. So making a note when you're teaching to talk to students and analyze and tell them what is deemed appropriate and what is not. So to give some examples, I have on this sheet of paper less polite and how to make things more polite or softened. So I'm going to write down an example real quick. Let's say I gave you a problem at school, and you said to me, that idea makes no sense. Now, that idea makes no sense. If I am teaching and you are a student and you say that to me, that could be deemed extremely rude, come off rude or inappropriate, or not quite the way that you'd maybe want it to come off. Sometimes non-native speakers might not realize that that's not quite the nicest way to say things. So instead, we're going to teach them to say something like this. That idea was a little confusing. Here, in this example, we have softened our speech and made it more polite and made it more inviting for further instructions versus kind of seeming like we're just writing it off a little bit or just not caring as much and not going to make the effort to make sense of what we're talking about. I'll give you another one. Let's say you needed to borrow a book from your friend. So you said, give me that booklet. I'm going to write that down. Give me that booklet. Now, that, when you say give me, it's kind of demanding. It's not very good. We probably don't want to say that. It's not going to come off super polite, and it's not going to make people want to give you what you asked for. Instead, you could say something like, would you mind if I borrowed that booklet? Here, we have made it into a question. in which student or whoever you're asking to borrow the booklet has the opportunity to say yes or no. They might be using it. You might not be able to use it. They might not be using it. You could totally use it. It just depends on the situation. All right. So we are continuing teaching politeness. There are some ways that teachers can help equip students to prepare for when we're talking about conversationally. So sometimes when non-native speakers are in conversations, they might have trouble understanding, or they might have trouble with not being able to relate to the topic. And so we want to equip these students to be able to interact politely, but also be able to have good conversational skills. So ways we can do this is by, when we're in class, we can ask the meaning of words for students. You can give students, ask your understanding right away, and ask the speaker, students can ask the speaker to slow down or speed up. And then use facial expressions is a really good way of giving students kind of, if they're not super strong in their L2 yet, using proper facial expressions to convey your point in body language is also really important. Okay, so then sometimes students, the last part I'd like to talk about is if students are in a conversation where they feel like they want to change the subject, but they don't want to be rude. Since we're teaching politeness, we can teach them the proper way to do this without having it come off as rude or that they don't really want to talk to the other person. So sometimes we do not have anything to input to the conversation, so a conversation could go like this. Person A: it's not easy learning the piano, is it? And person B could say, no, it's not, but I think some people are better at music than others. Person A could say, do you? What makes you say that? Person B says, that's just what I noticed. Person C, the non-native speaker, has been listening to this conversation but doesn't have anything to add because they don't play music. So they could come in and say, person C might say, you might be right. That reminds me of when I tried to learn how to play football. And then you can casually change the conversation, being polite and not trying to make it seem like you're just cutting people off. So that's how we can go ahead and teach politeness. Those are a couple of great examples, and I hope that you learned a lot about teaching politeness to non-native speakers. Thank you.